Welcome back to Prep Station Economics. In the last session, I told you we learned about price elasticity of demand, and we're going into income elasticity of demand. So that's what we're going to do now. Now, I told you earlier, it's not only price that affects demand. Also, your income affects demand. The income you have, the money you make determines how much of a commodity you buy and how much of a commodity you're not willing to buy based on the price change, actually. Okay, good. So let's look at this. The formula for this is percentage change in demand divided by percentage change in income. So this time around, we're switching the price with the income. So if your income changes, do you want to buy more of that product, regardless of what the price is? But if your income reduces, do you want to buy less of that product or buy more of it? So that's what we need to understand first. Now, looking at this formula right here, we can apply that into a question. But what we need to understand here is that whenever we solve, and we are going to get like two kind of answers. One answer is a negative income elasticity of income, and we have the positive income elasticity as well. So if it's positive, if your answer, the final answer is positive, it simply means that more goods are bought as income increases. That means your income is increasing, you're buying more of those goods. Of course, that's a positive thing. If you have more money, you should buy more cars, you should buy more homes, you should buy more food. Oh, would you eat more food? I think so. What about negative income elasticity as well? It means when you buy less goods because when you have more income. Imagine that you are making more money and you're buying less of that good. Of course, I'm very sure if you attend a public school, the moment your dad has more money, what happens? You leave a public school, you go to a private school. Or if you're maybe not only just talking about brands of education, talking about even the basic things you have around you. If you have more money, sometimes you buy less of a product. Example is maybe your pure water sachet. The more money you have, the less you want to buy water. At least you look at other means or other sources of water. So like I said, as you make more money, you might buy less of a product or buy more of that product, depending on your income elasticity in terms of that product, that determines that product. So let's assume that a man or a boy, let's just say, of course, a man that makes money, and this is the man right here. And this man formally makes about 100,000 every month, and that salary was increased to, let's say, 120,000 monthly. Okay, this same man was buying, let's say, 5 units of maybe wristwatches, or maybe he has a thing for wristwatches, so he had about 5 earlier, and as soon as this money increased all the way to 120, he bought 10. So that's a difference in terms of his income and the number of wristwatches he's willing to buy. So let's calculate this. The formula says percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price. Therefore, so what is his old income and what is his new income? Of course, we know this. The new income is the later one, and the old income was the former one. So now the change in his units is 5, because he's buying 5 now. That's 5 over the old one, which is 5, times 100 over 1. And let's do this for the same thing for income. His income usually was 100,000, now it's 120,000. So there's a 20,000 naira difference. That's 20,000 divided by 100,000. Of course, we don't know these zeros, so I'm going to just strike them out so we don't disturb ourselves with them. So it's just 2 over 10 times 100 over 1. So that would be 2 here, 1, and this becomes 5, and 5 here, 1, this becomes 20. Of course, this is now, we get it as 20%. We don't need the percent as well, because we're going to strike that out as well. So 5 here is 1, 5 here is 1, and we have 100, also a percent. So percentage cancel percentage. So we're left with 100 divided by 20. So here we go. 10 divided by 2 give us 5. 10 divided by 2 give us 5. So the value is 5. Look at this value. Is this value positive or is it negative? Of course, you tell me it's positive. So if it is positive, what did I tell you about positive elasticity of income? It means that as the income is increasing, the person is buying more of that commodity. But if it's not positive, that means as the income of the person is increasing, the person is buying less of that commodity, and vice versa. Okay, good. So I think we understand that. That brings us to the concept of types of goods. So looking at the types of goods, we have so many types of goods actually. We have essential goods, we have free goods, we have economic goods, we have giving goods, we have inferior goods, normal goods, luxury goods. But for this topic, we only talk about inferior, normal, and luxury goods. So let's start with inferior goods. Inferior goods are goods that the more money you have, the less you want to buy them, the less you want to patronize such businesses or such brands or such products. Example is a school bus or a normal bus. If you are in the middle class or lower than that, you might want to take a bus to work, take a bus to visit a friend or something like that. But as you make more money, you begin to consider other options like your personal car. And of course, the personal car is more expensive than the bus. So if your income increases, you buy a car or you buy more cars actually. And that's what we call it like a normal good. As your income increases, you buy a better brand of car or the latest model or even more cars, like 2 in your compound or 3. And as things get better, you might also want to buy what we call luxury goods. You want to buy a private jet, you want to buy a Lamborghini, you want to buy a yacht. Now, these are not just normal goods, they are luxury goods, they are expensive goods. And of course, one thing you notice here is that when price was increasing, inferior goods, the demand for inferior goods reduce. But as price also increases, the demand for normal goods increase. But it cannot be compared to the ratio for luxury goods. So when you do your calculations, when your value is more than 1, then that's when it's becoming more like a luxury good. The value is higher in terms compared to normal goods. So I think we've explained this already. And let us now look at questions that we could answer in terms of income elasticity of demand. Or we could just save all those questions for later when we're dealing with all the types of elasticity of demand. Now, for this one, we also have one last type, which is cross elasticity of demand. For cross elasticity of demand, we're talking about the price of one good versus the demand of another good. Now, we have 2 popular phone brands in Nigeria, Samsung and iPhone. And these brands are in high competition. Consumers want to buy these products. But you, of course, can tell that the price of one product affects the demand of the other product. And that's what really matters to us in terms of cross elasticity of demand. So we want to compare, we want to measure what's the degree of responsiveness of one price to another, of the price of one commodity to the demand of another commodity. That's what we want to compare in terms of cross elasticity of demand. Very good. So let's look at this example. It says price of Samsung is 200,000 in the first period, and now it became 250,000 naira. And before 100 units were sold, now 80 units are sold. And also the price of iPhone is 400,000 earlier. And please, these prices are not like the actual prices; they're just assumed. So they're like 400,000 earlier, and we have 450,000 naira now. And before 200 units were sold, and 150 units were now sold. But one thing I want you to understand here is that these 2 tables called demand schedules, they quite obey the law of demand, which means as price is increasing, demand is falling, and as price is reducing, demand is increasing. So they kind of obey the law of demand. That's what the major thing is, because they are substitutes, they are alternatives. So the question now is that should the owner or the manager or the CEO of iPhone, should they reduce their price? What would be the effect on the demand for Samsung? Should the manager or the owner of Samsung decides to increase their price for their products, for their phones, what would be the repercussion on the demand for iPhone? Of course, there will be changes because people would like to compare these prices when they're buying goods and services. So if you calculate this, all you just need to do is use the price of one against the demand of one. Use the same formula we've used. The formula saying that percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in income. But you're using the percentage change in quantity of, let's say, Samsung versus the price of the price of iPhone. We're using 2 goods now. That's why we call it cross elasticity of demand. Okay, good. So now that we understand this, let's take some questions about elasticity, and let's see how elastic your knowledge is about this topic. Okay, good. The first one says an important determinant of price elasticity of demand is what? Government policy, ease of substitution, price of other commodities, state of technology. What do you think the answer is? Of course, the answer is the ease of substitution, because price become elastic or inelastic based on alternatives. If there are alternatives, then of course you react to it. I'll give an example of this. If you have a good friend and you have just one friend, and maybe in your neighborhood, just one good friend. If you have an argument, would you react to that argument? Yes, you would. But if you have no other friend to play with or to talk to, you still end up making like settling things with your friends and just moving on and just keep being friends. But if you have like 10 friends around in the neighborhood, even 2 is enough if you have like just alternative. So if you and one friend are having an issue, what do? You switch to the other friend because they're alternative, they're substitute. That's what this is also saying. So if one good price is increasing and it's not positive for you, you go to another product. Okay, good. The second question says, when elasticity is 0, demand curve is what? Oh, I showed you. Do you remember that graph when we were doing the graph? Yes, of course, it is perfectly inelastic. Whenever it's 0, it's perfectly inelastic. Next question says, if the price of a bicycle changes from 120 to 80 and the quantity bought changes from 300 to 500 units, the elasticity of demand is what? If you do the calculation based on the formula, your answer should be 2, positive 2. Okay, let's go to the next one. If a fall in the price of commodity X, when we say commodity X, we just mean any commodity, like just one commodity, naming as X, brings about an increase in demand for commodity Y, the two commodities are, what do you think they are? A change in price of X brings about an increase in demand for Y. Of course, they are complements. Complements mean that they complement each other. They are used together. Example, a phone and a charger. So they work together. A car and petrol, right? They work together because if the price of cars increase, then of course the demand for petrol would decrease, because if people are not buying more cars because of the price of cars, then who would want to buy more petrol? If you're not buying phones, why would you want to buy the chargers? Because they are complementary good. They go hand in hand, just like bread and butter. If the demand of one commodity excludes another, it's said to be what? That certainly would be competitive demand. We talked about that during the session when we talked about when the price of one commodity affects another commodity, because they are what? Substitute. The iPhone and the Samsung phone, they are substitutes for each other. If you don't want the Samsung phone, you can use the iPhone. So if their price changes, it will definitely affect the other demand. Okay, let's get another question, number 6. It says, if the price of a commodity with elastic demand increases, don't forget the key word is what? Elastic demand. The demand is elastic. It's greater than 0 but less than 1. So it's greater than 1 but less than infinity. And the revenue accruing to the producer will what? What will happen if the price of an elastic product increases? What will happen to the revenue that the producer will get from this? Of course, the revenue will certainly decrease, because a small change in price will bring about a bigger change in demand. So if you increase the price by 1 naira or by 10 naira or by 15 naira, people will definitely buy less of your product, and more people will buy less of it. And that's not so positive in terms of economics. Next one, number 7, says the demand curve for factors of production. Is it perfectly elastic? Is it sloping downwards? Is it sloping upward? Or is it perfectly inelastic? Well, the answer is sloping downwards, because when you demand for factors of production, you demand for them for what they can do, what they can provide. And definitely they follow the law of demand, which means the higher the price, the lower the demand. Of course, let's talk about factors of production. One of those factors is land, one of those factors is labor, people working. So imagine you have a maid in your house, or you have a driver. So if the salary of the driver increases, would you want to have more of those drivers? Of course, no. You probably want to have less drivers. Some people have up to 10 maids in their homes. Let's say the government creates a law saying that all maids will be paid a certain amount of money. People have to cut down on their maids. The same way organizations are cutting down on their workers, because their salaries are increasing, or the wage they have to pay them are actually increasing. So that means they are obeying the law of demand, which says as price goes up, as the cost of something goes up, the demand for that thing, the demand for that product comes down. Another question to test our knowledge is, the demand for the factors of production is an example of what kind of demand? Is it competitive demand? Competitive demand is talking about demand between substitutes. Derived demand is talking about the demand for a product that will give you something else. Like if you demand for sugar, not simply because you want to take in the sugar, because you want to use the sugar to make pie or to make waffle, because you need sugar in the ingredients for that. So it's like it's going to derive waffle for you later. Or demand for book, not because you want to use the book for your personal usage, and you want to use it for an academic purpose. So you actually need it for an academic purpose, so you got the book. Another one is composite demand, talking about demand for products that can be used for multiple things. Like sugar can be used for, can be ingested, not ingested, eaten with maybe for that with meals, can be used to make confectioners, can be used to do a lot of things actually. I'm just going to scrap that. I'm just going to go back. I made a mistake. So I'm going to go back to composite demand. Composite demand are demand for items or goods that can serve multiple purposes, not just one purpose. Sugar is one of them. Sugar can be used for making cakes, can be used for, people can consume sugar directly, they can eat it. Sugar can also be used for other things too. Then joint demand. Joint demand is talking about demand for goods that are complementary, that they go hand in hand. Just like I said, bread and butter are the same. They go. If you need bread, you probably want butter. If you want, let's say, yam, you probably want egg. If you want a car, you probably want to buy petrol. You have a phone, you probably need a charger. You have a book, you probably need a pen. So this demand go hand in hand. If you sell more of one product, you sell more of the other product as well. So let's look at this. So the demand for factors of production is an example of what kind of demand, and that is derived demand. Very good. So let's go about next one, number 9. If 10% rise in price causes a 5% decrease in the quantity demand of a commodity, the elasticity of the demand is what? There is a 10% rise in the price, and that led to a 5% decrease in the quantity demanded of a commodity. If you solve this question properly, you find out that it is inelastic demand, because the change in the price cannot be compared with the change in the quantity demanded. We have 10% rise in price. Imagine you increase the price by 10%, then only 5% of people, 5% of your commodity or purchase reduced or is no longer there available. Taking a school fees, for example, a school decides to increase their school fees by 10%, and only about 5% of parents pulled out. That's inelastic demand. That's not so bad compared to when you're reducing by, let's say, increasing by 10% and 40% of the parents did not show up. So the last question is, if elasticity of demand is greater than 1 but less than infinity, demand is said to be what? Is it fairly elastic? Is it unitary elastic, perfectly inelastic, or perfectly elastic? Okay, so of course the answer is supposed to be fairly elastic rather. So because it's greater than 1 but less than infinity. You remember the formula we gave? Greater than 1 but less than infinity. So that brings us to the end of this session about elasticity of demand. We've learned about point elasticity of demand. We're talking about price. We've learned about income. We've learned about cross. Just to give you a quick recap, price elasticity of demand is talking about a small change or a big change in price leading to a bigger change or a smaller change in demand. I'm talking about income. Sometimes when your income changes a little, you see some people just a 5,000 increase in their salaries, they're buying more clothes. That is income elasticity of demand. And we also have cross as well, just a change in one price against the change in demand of another product. If Queensland School increases their school fees by just 5,000, what will happen to the demand of another school like Doveland? I hope you've learned something in this session. Thank you very much. We'll see you in the next session.